Good morning. So today we turn the corner and we dive into the deep end of the 66th book of the Bible, the 66th and final book of the Bible. There's a sense in which Revelation chapters 1 through 3 is all sort of prelude. It's warm up. And so we know now, hopefully you know, that John, an old man called up into heaven, sees Jesus in power and glory, and takes dictation on 7 letters. By the way, I mentioned last week, encouraged you to write a letter. I hope you wrote your letter. Many of you wrote your letter. We told you we would send you your letters in 3 months. We did not give a tutorial on how to address an envelope. And apparently, no one under the age of 30 has ever addressed an envelope. And so it is really interesting to see what people wrote or where they wrote it, and it's just like, oh my goodness. So maybe we'll send you your letter, maybe not. I don't know what to say. But the idea of writing a letter and maybe the idea of learning how to address an envelope, all of that I want to commend to you. So we saw these 7 letters, and now we turn the corner and we go, we get into the part of the book of Revelation, and this will be the rest of it, chapters 4 through 22. That is a little bit of it's sort of the dreamscape, it's the fantasy literature, it's apocalyptic, highly symbolic, all kinds of very interesting images and pictures that John is going to give us. And we're going to hear the word like a lot. So he says, I saw this and it looked like this. It wasn't this, but it looked sort of like this. And so we get a lot of this going on. It's very, it's powerful. And we start right away with chapters 4 and 5, and we texted this out. So N.T. Wright, a very prominent theologian, has identified Revelation chapter 4 and 5 as among the most important chapters in all of the Bible. And there, I do believe that to the extent that I can help you put on the Revelation chapter 4 and 5 glasses, and you then start to see the world through this vision that God is giving us, that is ultimate reality, that is a game-changing gift that God gives to us. So what we get, and I'm just going to walk through, it's 2 chapters, and we're just going to walk through this line by line. But before we do that, I just want you to understand what we get here is we get, in essence, we're ushered in with John into the war room, into the war council. So this is a scene from A Bridge Too Far. And General Horod is giving a briefing, and this is about Operation Market Garden. It's about the Allied forces going in and going against, trying to reclaim Holland. And so this is a principle explaining to everybody, this is the battle plan. Okay, so that's what we're getting in Revelation chapter 4 and 5. Here's another scene. This is another war council. So this is from from Lord of the Rings. This is the Council of Elrond. This is the first time the Fellowship of the Ring comes together, and they decide how they are going to fight evil and what specifically, who's going to do what. So that's what we're getting in Revelation chapter 4 and 5. So here we go. After this, so after I took the dictation on the 7 letters, after this I looked, and by the way, I think this is a bad translation. The word looked is in the imperative. And so it's got this sense of look and watch and behold. And I think it just loses it the way they've portrayed it here. Earlier this week, I did an interview. Lake Light had an event, and it was with this guy, Rusty Reno, who is an editor of a magazine that sort of lives at the intersection of pre-political thought. It's called First Things. So what are the first things? It's the virtues. It's the starting assumptions before you even get to politics. And so I was interviewing him. just a few days ago, he interviewed Peter Thiel. So Peter Thiel is the, Silicon Valley gazillionaire, sort of very iconoclastic, contrarian guy who's had a high profile for 15 years. Board member at Apple, all these things. And Thiel has been out for the last year talking about AI and Armageddon, AI and the Antichrist. When I was on sabbatical, I was at Oxford, and I see these posters. This is the first time I see Peter Thiel's speaking on AI and Armageddon and the Antichrist. And I'm looking at this sign going, Peter Thiel is speaking on AI and the Antichrist. Okay. Didn't expect to see that. So in the last month, he's had articles in the Wall Street Journal and New York Times and all these things. And so I listened because I was preparing for this interview with Rusty Reno, and he drops the interview that he has with Peter Thiel the morning I'm supposed to interview him. So I'm like scrambling, going, I got to listen to this. I didn't get all the way through, but I listened to the first 20 minutes, and you can listen if you want. And Thiel made a much more interesting and thoughtful argument than I expected. He was much more conversant with the biblical story. But one of the things that he said is, look, you read the book of Revelation, and the big idea that you come away with is pay attention to what's going on. Watch. Be looking. It's not be panicking, and it's not ignore it. It's not be completely consumed with it, but it's not pay no attention. Understand the times, figure out what's going on, and look. So that's the word, look. This word look occurs over and it's in one sense, some have argued, it is the verb of the book of Revelation. Like over and over and over again, you see the word look, pay attention. So after this, I looked, as we should, and there before me was a door standing open in heaven. And the voice I had first heard speaking to me like a trumpet, so this goes back to Revelation chapter 1, which is all sort of going back to Exodus. So remember, the book of Revelation is the last book of the Bible. You have to have read the first 65 books to understand all the allusions that are going on. Even as, well, you have to do that. And so this takes us back to Exodus 19, where God first speaks to the Jews. So they've come out of Egypt, they've come through the Red Sea, they've gone to Mount Sinai, and God is going to speak to them. And God speaks to them, and it's in thunder and lightning, and the people say, yeah, we're never doing that again. So they say to Moses, you go meet with him, and tell us what he says, but we are not doing that again, because it is so terrifying and loud and overwhelming. And so there it is. The voice I had first heard speaking to me like a trumpet said, come up here and I will show you what must take place after this. At once I was in the Spirit, and there before me was a throne in heaven with someone sitting on it. So I'll say it again, the book of Revelation was written for us, but not written to us. So we have to understand how the first century hearers would have heard this. So the word throne means locus of power. I saw that there was someone who had power. And they would have heard it. By the way, the word throne occurs 84 times in the book of Revelation. This is a sense in which we're talking a lot here about who has power. And they would have heard this. So these churches that are being oppressed, right, that are struggling, they would have heard this thinking Caesar has the throne. Like Caesar is the one who is in charge. And now what they're hearing is, oh, there's a different throne. And so I get called, I get to look into the war room. I'm being briefed on what the plans are. The curtain has been pulled back, and I see that there is a throne, and someone is sitting on it. And the one who sat there had the appearance of jasper and ruby. Okay, so this goes back to Ezekiel chapter 1. So Ezekiel has a vision of God the Father. And he talks about jasper and ruby and emeralds, and Ezekiel's vision, his theophany, his view of God. He talks about a wheel within a wheel, and we don't get a physical description of God. And so you sort of get these things like, I saw this thing and it was sort of like, jasper and ruby, a rainbow that shone around. So the rainbow, there's a big halo around the throne. And we're seeing that John is saying there's this throne, and on the throne was one I cannot begin to describe, but he's holy. Surrounding the throne were 24 other thrones, and seated on them were 24 elders. Now, so John says, so then I sort of, take away, I sort of, get on the, I go up and I look down and I see that this throne is surrounded by 24 other thrones. So 24, lots of speculation. Some people try to explain it with 24 hours in a day. That makes no sense to me. Others note that Caesar had 24 bodyguards. So at that time, a king had 12 bodyguards, an emperor had 24 bodyguards. Maybe there's some reference there. I think 24 is just a statement of the leaders of both the house of Israel, right? The 12 tribes of Israel. And then it's the 12 apostles. And so you just have the people of God. I saw the leaders of the people of God. And they were dressed in white. So they're holy, they've been purified, they've been sanctified. And they had crowns of gold on their heads. So they're kings themselves, they're leaders, they're not nobodies. And so, again, Jesus is the King of kings, right? It's not just that he's king, he's over all the other kings. And so you've got this throne room, and it's massive, and there's thrones around the throne. From the throne came flashes of lightning, rumbles, and peals of thunder. So we got this, again, Ezekiel 1, pyrotechnic Super Bowl halftime show, all kinds of flashing strobe lights, and it's like, oh my goodness. In front of the throne, 7 lamps were blazing. These are the 7 spirits of God. So the lampstands is a term that we saw in Revelation chapter 1 to refer to the churches. The churches were lampstands. We don't really get told what the lamps are. We do know there's no need of light. We will see that later on in the book of Revelation, that there's no sun in heaven, but there's no need for light because the radiance, the brilliance of God himself, there's no darkness, there's no shadow in heaven. Like there's no spot that isn't completely illuminated by simply the presence and the glory and the radiance of God. So maybe this represents some sense. 7 again, 7 is the number that we see over and over. The numbers are important, they're symbolic, they're more than literal, they're saying other things. 7 is the number of completeness. And so we've got perfect, we've got complete lamps, and so maybe this is the sense that there's complete illumination of truth that's going on in the presence of God. These are the 7 spirits of God, so God's presence is fully there, the Holy Spirit is there. Also in front of the throne, there was what looked like a sea of glass. So I want to remind you, the word like, we see the word like a lot. It is the word, just in the margins, it is the word homoousian. So, and this is important at this particular moment because we just had this trip to Nicaea outside of Istanbul for the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea, in which the big debate was over the word homoousian and homoousian. And so the Arians, those that wanted to argue that Jesus was not completely God, somehow a little bit less than God, they wanted the word, they wanted the word like. And so they wanted to say Jesus is like God. But the point they were making is Jesus is not completely God. And the council, the church said, no, Jesus is fully God. And that's one of the things we've been seeing in Revelation chapter 2 and 3. The descriptions of Jesus they're all references to the qualities and the titles and the attributes of God in the Old Testament. They're all being ascribed to Jesus. Jesus is God. So just a reminder, that's one of the big points. People come to the book of Revelation thinking this is all about when. I'm going to find out when these things are going to happen. And no, it's all about who. It's about Jesus. And the what is about worship. Jesus is fully God, and he is in control. So just reinforcing that. So the idea of a sea gets a lot of discussion because water is complicated. So there was in the Temple of Solomon this huge bronze bowl that was before the altar. And there's a sense in which you had to sort of get to God by going through the sea. It has allusions back to the Jews going through the Red Sea, and then the water was used by the priests to be purified so they would be ready for their duties. I'm not persuaded by any of that. I think what we've got going on here is a statement about God over evil. So in the book of Revelation, the word sea refers over and over to things that are bad, things that are evil, things that are chaotic, things that are out of control. The Jews, as a general rule, didn't like the water. Remember, they spent 40 years in the desert. Everybody that knew how to swim before they went in died. So there's no swim classes in the desert. So they are, and their enemies generally were the people of the sea. So the Jews live in the desert. And so they're often challenged and frustrated by water. And in the book of Revelation, we're going to see that it's the beasts that are going to come out of the sea. And the sea is threatening, and the Psalms are filled with language about the white water that is coming after me, God. I'm drowning. And then in Revelation chapter 21, we'll have this statement where John says, and then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, and behold, there was no sea. Right? There was no trouble. There was no chaos. And so what we're being told here is that before the throne is a sea, but it's perfectly calm. It's tamed. And there's a sense in which evil is just at the foot of God. Like God is over evil. Even evil is subservient and it's quiet before God. And there are 4 living creatures. And they were covered with eyes, so they see what's going on. They know, they're smart. They see what is going on. So in this time, it was not uncommon for kings to have thrones, and the legs of the throne were animal legs, right? There was some sense that animals were part, that they were sitting on top of nature. So here we have, so Caesar is obviously sitting on a throne that's been carved and he's got animals there. So here, God is sitting on a throne and the animals are alive, right? And they are smart and they have eyes, they can see everywhere. The first living creature was like a lion. The second was like an ox. The third had a face like a man. The fourth was like a flying eagle. So a lion is the king of the wild animals, and an ox is the king of domestic animals, and an eagle is the king of all the birds, and man is king of all. And so there's a sense in which God is over all of creation. Now, there's also this, early on, the 4 gospel writers all get assigned an animal. So Mark is the lion, and Luke is the ox, and John is the eagle, and Matthew is the man. And so maybe this is suggesting that that these are representatives of the gospel writers, of the evangelists, of the life of Jesus. I don't know. Each of the 4 living creatures had 6 wings and was covered with eyes all around, even under its wings. So the 6 wings would take us back to Isaiah chapter 6, where Isaiah says, in the year the king Uzziah died, I saw the Lord, and he was high and exalted, and the train of his robe filled the temple. And he was surrounded by these angels, these cherubim and seraphim, and they all had 6 wings. And they were flying in the presence of God. With 2 they covered their eyes, with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they flew, and they were reciting over and over, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. So here we have these creatures, and they have eyes everywhere. They're seeing everything that's going on. Day and night they never stop saying, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. So, holy means above, separate, completely distinct from, altogether better than. And Almighty, this is John's favorite description or favorite title for God. And it speaks of God's overwhelming power. So let me just read you into an interesting little side story here. So I'm not a comic guy. I don't know much about this other than what I've read, but I know there's big debates between those that are DC people and those that are Marvel people, and they have, supposedly one is better than the other, and they got very different approaches to things, and Marvel's winning, and that's sort of all I know. But Marvel, I was reading that Marvel had a problem because they wanted to introduce Captain Marvel, but Captain Marvel was OP, overpowering. And so much more powerful than the other characters and so much better than the other characters. You couldn't have Captain Marvel in the story because then all the drama's gone. Well, then now you just know who's going to win. And so you lose the tension, you lose the drama. And so the writers of the Marvel series had to figure out a way to introduce other characters that were approaching the kind of power that Captain Marvel had, and they had to sort of dumb down or weaken Captain Marvel. So she gets beat up in certain ways so that there was drama. So one of the quote problems of the book of Revelation is that there's no tension. Right? Once you get into this, you go, Christianity is not dualism. You don't say, well, there's good and there's evil and we don't know who's going to win, or there's God and there's Satan and we don't know who's going to win. No. That's not the way this gets portrayed at all. It's God is OP, right? When he shows up, there's no question what's going to happen. Now, okay, so this takes some of the drama out of the story, but remember, in one sense, who cares? But remember, this is being written to people who are suffering, who are oppressed. They've been under persecution. So Nero, comes to the throne in 57, and then, there's all these Christians start to get fed to the lions, and they're used in gladiatorial games, and they're lit on fire to light up Caesar's gardens, and Paul is killed, and Peter is killed, and Timothy is beaten to death. And so you had that wave of terror under Nero, and then it sort of dissipated for a little bit, but now you've got Domitian coming along. And Domitian is worse than Nero. And that's part of the message that is given in the book of Revelation, is to say it's bad and it's going to get worse before it gets better. But I'm going to show you what's actually going on. You're going to look behind the curtain and you're going to see, right, that God is on the throne. You're going to see what's going to happen. You don't have to panic. So that's a little bit of what we're getting here. God is almighty. He is OP. We read on. Whenever the living creatures give glory, honor, and thanks to him who sits on the throne and who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before him who sits on the throne and worship him who lives forever and ever. So we're going to see sort of like three rings of worship that takes place. So when the living creatures start to worship, right, then the elders kick in and they join in. And then we're going to see that it's going to continue to spread. And the elders are saying, you are worthy. By the way, worthy is not really a religious term. It's a political term. It's what Caesar demanded that people would say about him. You're worthy. But this is Caesar had people saying to him, you are worthy, Caesar, to receive glory and honor and power. This is just language that Jesus is just throwing back. Jesus is saying to the churches, Caesar's a little puff piece. He's a little toy soldier. He's nothing. Don't worry about this. In heaven, in reality, what's really happening is that In the throne room of all throne rooms, you have kings upon kings upon kings, and they are worshiping the one who truly is worthy of all glory and honor and power. For you created all things, and by your will they were created and have their being. Then I saw, we turn out of chapter 4 now, we get into chapter 5, so we're moving out of just the throne room. We've just had the scene set, like we're looking on what's happening. Now we get to the action. Then I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne, so then I saw in the hand of God, a scroll. Okay, a scroll. These are the orders. This is the message. This is the will. This is the commission. These are the battle plans. I've got the plans for how we're going to do this. I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll with writing on both sides. You didn't usually write on both sides of a scroll. So there's a lot said here. There's a lot of information here. So it's written on both sides and sealed with 7 seals. Perfectly secret. Nobody knows the plan. And I saw a mighty angel proclaiming in a loud voice, asking the question, which is, in one sense, the question. Who is worthy to break the seals and open the scroll? Who do we follow? Who has the answers? Who can do this? Who can execute God's plan? Who can understand what's going on? Who do we follow? But no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth could open the scroll or even look inside. No one appears to be qualified. And so, John says, I wept. I'm looking on and I'm seeing this. And suddenly it looks like the plans aren't going to go forward. I wept because no one was found who was worthy to open the scroll and look inside. Then one of the elders said to me, don't weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals. So he says, the Lion can do this. And this is the Lion of Judah. So Judah was one of the 12 sons of Jacob. Remember, Jacob has 12 sons. These 12 sons become the 12 tribes. Judah was the tough kid, right? We see this all the way back in Genesis. Judas could beat up his brothers. Judas was the tough guy. Then we get into the book of Judges, and we see that it's Judah's descendants that are going to be, they're the Marines. They're the ones that are in the toughest parts of the battle, right? So you got a lion, you got a predator. Yeah, and it's from the root of David. So he's a descendant of David, right? He's an offspring of David's lineage, and this is all, of course, tying all these storylines together. This is the Messiah. This is the promised one, right? Because he was going to sit on David's throne forever. He is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals. So he says, don't panic. The Lion can do this. And I turned and I saw a lamb, looking as if it had been slain, standing at the center of the throne encircled by the 4 living creatures and the elders. 2 words that are used in Greek for lamb. One of them is an adult sheep. One of them is a very small lamb. It's the small lamb, arnion, that is used here. So it's this weak lamb. It's not just a tiny little helpless lamb. You're looking for a lion, top of the food chain, claws, king of the jungle, power. And what you see is this little lamb. And it's not just that it's a little lamb. It looks like it's been slain. And the word there is better translated slaughtered. It looks like it's been mercilessly slaughtered. And it's encircled. By the way, it says it's standing at the center of the throne. So God the Father is seated on the throne. And now we have Jesus standing in the same spot that God is seated, right? We have some metaphysical, mystical, confusing, mysterious kind of description of the union of the Father and the Son. So the Lamb is standing at the center of the throne, is encircled by the 4 living creatures and the elders. And the Lamb had 7 horns, so 7 perfect horns, power. this little lamb has power and has 7 eyes, perfect sight. It knows everything, right? There's nothing, it's not missing anything. 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God. It's fully God. It's fully God, sent out into all the earth. He went and took the scroll from the right hand of him who stands on the throne. And when he had taken it, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb. Each one had a harp, and they were holding golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of God's people. So the drama, we've got drama, right? We've got no drama because God is OP, but suddenly it looks like we've got drama because there's no one that's qualified to carry out the plan. And he panics and he cries, and then the elder says, no, the lion will take care of this. And he turns and he sees a lamb that is slaughtered. and the lamb goes and he takes the scroll, right? I'll do this. I will execute the plan. And when this happens, the 4 living creatures fall down in worship. And they have these bowls of incense, bowls collect the prayers of God's people. And they sang a new song. Okay, we've already seen that they were singing a song. They were singing a song about God being the one who created all things. But now it's a new song because something new has happened. Right? They're not singing praise to the Lamb because the Lamb created all things, although we know that that's true. All things were created through him, right? John 1. But now they're praising him because he's worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals because you were slain. And with your blood, you purchased for God persons from every tribe, language, people, and nation. You are worshiped because you sacrificed yourself for us. You have made them, you, us, to be a kingdom and priests. Priests are those that are intermediaries. We are to be priests to this world. We stand between God and those that don't know God. And we are to explain God and the plan. Because people don't have the story. And so we are invited to be the priests. Well, by the way, we're relaunching in January. We're relaunching Alpha. I think it's a very effective way to invite people who are outside the story into 8 dinner conversations about the biggest questions of life and these attitudes of no judgment and no shame. And so we will be doing that. And by the way, I mean, something is happening at this moment, right? You can say Aslan seems to be on the move. I keep saying this, different people are coming to faith. I mentioned talking with Rusty Reno on Thursday. On Monday, I recorded a podcast with Jonathan Rauch. Jonathan Rauch is a writer for The Atlantic, very prominent. I mean, he's always very bold in defining himself as a gay Jewish atheist. And in 2003, he wrote an article for The Atlantic in which he said, Christianity is declining, it's dying. And he said, this is the best news ever. And then about a year ago, he came out and he said, I have never been more wrong about anything in my life. Of all the stupid things that I've done or said or written, and he says, and there's a lot, this is the stupidest thing I've ever said. It turns out, he says, the founders were right. Like, you cannot govern, you cannot have a country if there isn't some meaning-giving institution or plan or something that is going to shape people's lives. Because what happens is people who are not going to be religious and fill their minds and their souls and their days and their time pursuing God are going to go into politics. And they're going to be defined by politics. And he goes, we now have 20 years of what I thought were going to be the best times ever. And he goes, oh my goodness, secularism has failed. He goes, it cannot give meaning to people. We absolutely need people to have faith. Now, to be clear, he does not have faith. He does not think it's true. But he now says, but I think it's true. So I interviewed him and I said, a little bit of hypocrisy in there somewhere, I think. Like, I don't believe this, but I need you to believe it. And I need you, and his book, Cross Purposes, he's very critical of the church. And he says, the church needs to be more Christian. The church is becoming all politics. And he goes, we need the church to be filled with people who are going to love their neighbors and their enemies and follow Jesus, right? So all that to say, that was, he would admit the tide seems to be turning. And then this week, I just saw a couple days ago, some YouTuber, prominent atheist, new atheist advocate, 11 million people watching him. He's now said, okay, you know what? On further review, I really did not understand all that was there behind Christianity. There's a lot more there that I suddenly have got to say. Yeah, a lot of things that I was saying aren't true. So we are to be priests, right? We are to be intermediaries, inviting people. Jesus says, I have died for you to be a kingdom and to serve our God, and they will reign on earth. Then I looked and heard the voices of many angels, numbering thousands upon thousands, and 10,000 times 10,000. They encircled the throne and the living creatures and elders. So now you got the second wave of worship that's taking place. It was initially the four living creatures and the elders, and now that's kicking off worship that is going beyond that. And then in a loud voice they were saying, worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive power and wealth and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and praise. 7 attributes of God, of things that God deserves, right? 7, it shows up over and over. Then I heard every creature in heaven and on earth. So now it's the third wave of worship. So first it's the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders, and then it becomes, this angelic choir and all these things, 10,000 times 10,000. And now every creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth and in the sea and all is in them are saying, to him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be praise and honor and glory and power forever and ever. That day is coming, right? There will be a time when every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Some to their utter horror, and others confirming that their life has been shaped by this vision. The 4 living creatures said, amen, and the elders fell down and worshiped. So there is so much there that I would like to spend the next months on, but that's not what's going to happen. So we see that God is OP. It's not a close fight. We see that Jesus is God. We see Jesus and the Father as one on the throne. We see that the lion is a lamb. The images we are given of our Lord is of a powerful predator initially that tears apart his enemies. But then that's not what happens. He wins by dying. And we are called to that. We are recruited onto Team Lamb, not Team Lion. Right? If we had more time, I would just read the Sermon on the Mount right now. Here's Jesus' manifesto. And I get in trouble for this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So one of the brilliant things that Tolkien does in Lord of the Rings, Tolkien and Lewis disagreed over whether or not you could have a figure that was a Christ figure in literature. Lewis, of course, had Aslan the lion. Tolkien thought that was a stupid thing to do. It didn't work. Tolkien divided the offices of Jesus into prophet, priest, and king. And he had the prophet being Gandalf and the king being Aragorn. And then the priest was Frodo. And who is Frodo? He's a halfling. He's weak, right? He doesn't have power. And the way Frodo is going to execute the plan is to do something that Sauron cannot imagine. Sauron is preparing for the battle, strength, toe to toe. And what does Frodo do? Frodo gives up the power. He throws away the ring. And Sauron's got no plan for that. Like, wait, you're gonna sacrifice yourself for this to happen. Well, there is so much here, but I'm out of time.